Second.
Junebug.
This is a system that I've actually had for probably 2 months now, and I've kind of tested it. I think I've tested it pretty extensively. I'm going to go over the most impactful differences between analog and the digital system first, and then I'll tell you about the rest of the experience afterwards. So the biggest difference that I experience with ProSight in general is that, first and foremost, it is drastically better than analog for racing. And the biggest differences that I noticed is that the frame rate of analog is actually not smooth. We see it as maybe 60 frames per second or higher because it's interlaced video, which means one frame is coming in as the other frame is going out. So it looks very nice and smooth, but in reality, it's not. It's actually very low frame rate video. I think it's probably around 20, 25 frames per second. Connex, this system in the high performance mode and the H+ mode, is actually 60 frames per second. So the very first thing I noticed when I was flipping back and forth between analog and digital is that I could fly so much easier with the digital, so much easier. It was like effortless what I was doing. And at first I thought it was because there was a lack of static and the signal was so much more clear, but it's not. I now think that it's because it's truly 60 frames per second. There's no delay. The delay is not a concern. But you actually get more information from the video than you do with analog. This is just a theory, I'm just kind of guessing, but this is my actual experience. I have tried to figure this out a lot. I spent 2 full days just trying to figure out why I can fly so much better with the ProSight than I can with analog, and that's what I came to the conclusion of, that it's because I have so much more information as to what the quad is doing, and I get more immediacy of that information when I'm flying. In addition to that, the video signal being totally clear and like solid, that's an absolute, huge benefit. But for the most part, if you're racing, having that extra information of what your quad is doing in the air and having the clarity of video and not having to deal with anybody else's video stomping on yours, these two things almost give you an unfair advantage. Now, not to say that you can't beat someone with ProSight, but I mean, of course, it's not going to be the determining factor if you win or not. But for the most part, if you want to be a competitive racer and you're actually good enough to be competitive, ProSight is going to just make your life a lot easier. So you've probably already invested a whole bunch of money, and I would recommend you invest your money in ProSight too if you're trying to be competitive. For acrobatics, I don't see as much of an advantage, although I can fly a lot better with it, so I can be a lot smoother. But for the most part, I'm usually flying behind thick trees and buildings or something, and I'm usually worried of losing signal. So the biggest drawback to ProSight is that if you do go behind something that does obstruct your video signal, you will lose your video and it will not return for about a second. So 1 second is like an eternity in this space, so you're pretty much dead. That is the biggest downside. Now I'm going to go over the general experience of using this thing. So obviously this is the first iteration of digital HD video, and nothing is really perfect, but it's pretty good. It's annoying to have to carry your ground station around. This is the ground station, and it does have 3 buttons on it, and you're going to have to fiddle with these buttons to change settings and do whatever. It's got 1 HDMI port. It does not have a DVR on board, and that's the power line. It will take 4S and I think 5S, 7 to 17 volts. So it's pretty good. You just plug a 4S in, and it's a USB powered. And updating these things are the easiest. This is the easiest update process I've ever had with any device in the history of devices. You literally install the applet, the little tiny program, and you plug in the USB, push the button, and it's done. It updates. Period. Always works every single time. And it's on the receiver, and it's on the transmitter as well, the USB port. which updates the camera actually as well. So the camera is updated through the USB port. So the ground station is a little bit annoying because you have to carry a ground station, but come on, it's digital. They have to have some extra stuff in there, so we don't have a choice. And it doesn't have a DVR built in, so basically your ground station ends up looking like this. So this is not ideal, definitely not ideal, and it's similar to pretty much everybody else's ground station that I've seen. The HDMI goes out into this HD DVR, and then the DVR comes out and goes into your goggles. So that's how I see when I'm flying. I use a little USB charger thing that I hacked together, and I plug in a 4-cell battery with a what's it called, beeper on it, so I know when the voltage gets low. So this is the standard camera, standard lens next to the H+ lens, and the standard modes are, there's high quality mode, there is high performance mode, and then there's a new mode called H+ mode. I'm not going to show you all these modes because you can, if you get it, you're going to play with it yourselves, and it doesn't really make a difference. The high performance and H+ modes are not full 720p. I mean, they're broadcast in 720p, but the resolution is actually lower. What they're doing is they're actually, for the high performance mode, they're actually interlacing the video like we do with analog, but it's 60 frames per second interlacing, so it's much smoother. And what they've done with the H+ is that they have gone with a 1.4 millimeter lens, I believe, or 1.6. I think it's 1.4, and then they've just cropped the center of the sensor to give you a progressive view. So they claim that it's better, but the reason why that I like the high performance with the regular lens better is because it is actually a wider field of view. That's the biggest thing that I've been telling them. I really wish that they'd give us a wider view lens. There are some other options that I could use, but I am too lazy. I really just need to fly. I stopped building things. The camera protector kind of fits both of them, and that's okay if you choose to use that. This is the race antenna. The race antenna is about half the size of the standard antenna, which I also prefer because I primarily fly acro, and for acro I'm flying behind objects, and this antenna, they tell me, has 30% more signal performance. What I see in actual practice is that the bigger antenna has like 200% better performance, and it's way better, and the weight is, I mean, negligible. It's whatever. I don't really hook branches or trees with it. I don't really care, so it's fine. The signal is fantastic, so I fly with that. That's my acro setup. I also use this for racing because why would I want worse video signal for racing? All right, so the next biggest thing that I want to talk about with ProSight is that this is a company that does not know how to make low quality components. They literally, they just have no idea how to cut costs and make low quality components. All their stuff is super duper high quality, and the most high quality component of this whole thing, which I love and I wish they would use on everything in this sport, is this little connector. So, if I can get it to focus right, this connector is the connector where the antenna connects to the VTX, and check that out. It's massive. This is a massive connector, and it's fantastic. Look at that. Feel that click. That click is so reassuring. It is so solid. I wish our VTXs would use this. I wish our receivers would use this connector. I wish everything would use this damn connector. Anyways, that's that. All right, so that, and also all their wires are silicone. They don't have any cheap China wires. They're all silicone, nice wires. Everything works great. This is my frame, my general frame design that holds Connex. It works fantastic. I really like it a lot. It should be available for sale pretty soon. You can get a nice, super steep camera angle on it, and the camera is fully protected. So you can't really knock the camera unless you go directly towards the middle and hit something. All right, I'm going to go over some of the technical aspects of this thing, at least what I know about, as far as I know about. So this actually runs on 5.8. The antennas that come with it are tuned for 5.8 and lower. So I believe it runs from actually 5 gigahertz all the way up to 6 gigahertz, and that's why you have to use these antennas with it. IB Crazy has used his own antennas and gotten, I think, 3 or 4 miles range on it, but for the most part, you can't just use any rubber ducky antenna. You have to use their antennas because it's more tuned, it's properly tuned for their frequency range. The reason they are allowed to use the lower frequency range is because regulations actually state that as long as you scan the waves and make sure there's nothing on the lower frequencies, you are legally allowed to use them. Our analog systems do not do that. this does do that. So it can self-select a lower frequency for better performance. And that's what it broadcasts to this. These are actually multiple in, multiple out antennas. So there's two-way communication between the VTX and the receiver. And the actual energy being broadcasted, I think, is up to 1 watt or maybe even higher than 1 watt. But for the most part, it's two-way communication, and it can change its frequency on the fly based on what's going on in the environment. So if somebody else powers on, if it senses something else going on, it'll just flip channels really quick, and you won't even notice anything. You'll just notice a blip in your video. Next thing I want to talk about is the Falcore and the Draco. I just got back from CES, and the Falcore and the Draco are both excellent crafts, and I would say that thankfully for a new person entering the sport, you do not need to buy any of the old stuff anymore. So the most recent ready-to-fly quads that came out from major companies are the Thrust UAV Riot, the Falcore from ProSight from Amazon or Connex, and the Draco from Uvify. The Falcore from ProSight themselves and the Draco both use the same ProSight tech in them. The Falcore is awesome, and the biggest value in the little time that I had to play with it was the shield mode, which is the super beginner mode. And what that does is it basically mixes all the controls, so your throttle is your altitude, and it only goes from 1 to 3 feet. It uses the sonar. The sonar works perfect. And then your roll is mixed with the yaw. So all you do is you pitch forward, and it has auto level. So you pitch forward and you roll, and it yaws, and it's perfect. It's so easy to fly. Really, anybody that can fly a Phantom can easily pick up the Falcore and go through gates. Not fast, but they can get the FPV experience. Now, whether that actually trains you to fly real FPV, I don't know. But it was a really, really valuable experience to have, because you don't need to play simulators. You don't need to do anything. You just pick up the thing and fly it. In the coming weeks or months, I hope to actually get one of each and test them and do a real review on them, and also fly them myself, because I prefer not to build anything anymore, ever. It would be really nice if I could just switch to these ready-to-fly crafts entirely myself, because I want to do that. I don't like building anymore.